Okay, thank you to those of you who have already watched my spoiler-free review for Captain America Civil War, but this is your official spoiler warning. If you have not seen this movie yet, while you're watching this, stop the video here, go and see it, and then come back here later, and we can all have a nice little discussion in the comments below. And of course, I am going to go full out here. I'm not really going to hold too much back. And so if you just don't care, then let's get on with this. Okay, so what I meant by very interesting prologue is that we see that Bucky Barnes is being controlled by Hydra by certain keywords from a book. And then, once he complies, he is sent out on a mission that ultimately really changes the face of this movie towards the end, but I'm not going to get into that yet. And then we cut to present day where we see the new Avengers out on a mission to try and track down the leading agent from Hydra, who was also working for S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time, from Captain America the Winter Soldier, whose name I can't remember, so I apologise for that. You're going to have to tell me what that is again down below. And it gets to the point where they track him down, but he sets off a bomb that Scarlet Witch tries to control the explosion of, and then she eventually throws him into a building, but it's full of civilians, which turn out to be Wakandans, and this leads to a very interesting introduction from Tony Stark, where he's given a presentation on what seems to be augmented reality, as we see him, like, de-age by about 20-30 years, and it's quite astounding to see, especially when this one shot, and it's basically him saying goodbye to his parents, and there's this one shot where his mom, like, kisses him goodbye, leaves the frame, and then you see older Tony in the door frame, and that just really blew my mind, because it was like, what? How did, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if they show how they did that on the Blu-ray. Please put that in as a special feature for us fans. I think that would be awesome to see. Anyway, back to the movie. We also then see that the teleprompter wants him to introduce Pepper Potts onto screen, but then later on in the movie we find out that her and Tony are actually on a break, which is a shame because I would have loved to have seen Gwyneth Paltrow back as Pepper Potts in this movie. Whether she's in a deleted scene or not, we don't know yet, but it would be cool if she actually came back for one of these other Marvel movies, because we haven't really seen her since Iron Man 3, which is getting to be a real shame because everyone loves her character as far as I know. Then, of course, as things go on, we see that Secretary Ross wants to put in what they call the Sokovian incident, which is where they pick what missions they want the Avengers to be sent out on. Now, while Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, is okay with this being decided, it's Tony that... Sorry, no, beg your pardon. Captain America is completely against the idea. That's what I meant to say. It's Tony who is actually all for it and thinks they need to be put in check because he finds out about a young boy that was killed while they were kicking, excuse my language, but kicking ass in Sokovia during the events of Age of Ultron. So he really feels that this is something that does need to be put in place. And of course, even people like Black Widow even agree with him, but then Steve gets news of the tragic loss of Margaret Peggy Carter, who is now sadly passed on in her sleep, and then it cuts to her funeral. So we were teased with a big Marvel death, and this is it. And we see Steve really trying to deal with her loss, and you really feel for the guy at this point. You know, he becomes so much more than just a superhero, and this is the beautiful thing about Marvel movies, is that it makes these heroes personal characters as well as their fantastic comic book personas. Now, we've got to get down to the big talk. Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Oh my goodness, he is perfect in this role, and we even get a little cameo from Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. It feels so nice to finally say that. And is it me, or is Aunt May getting younger and hotter all the time throughout these movies? And, oh man, once you see Tony and Peter interacting, there is just such huge geekgasm here, which is very cool to see. And we obviously see him inclining that he's going to build a better suit for Peter as well. And then when you eventually see the fact that Tony has 36 hours to bring in Barnes, Rogers, and Falcon, it's a real incredible scene that it leads to, which is, of course, the big fight at the airport. Now, the one thing I couldn't give away in my non-spoiler review is that Spider-Man is definitely on Team Iron Man, and they actually show that as the camera's panning between both teams, and they did a very good job at getting him out of the trailers. But I'm not gonna lie, to see Spider-Man in with the other Avengers, I almost lost it, as I've been waiting so long to see this moment. And okay, they were fighting each other, but to still see him with that team was just, I can't geek out enough, put it that way. And Russo brothers and Marvel, you really made a young comic books fan's dream come true here, so thank you so much. Now, the interesting thing that it leads to here is that Spider-Man is only in about 3 scenes, and the last scene I'm going to get to in a few minutes. But obviously, after this big airport scene, we see Cap and Iron Man try to resolve things at this bunker, but ultimately it leads to the weakest villain in the Marvel Universe since Maraketh, I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Thor the Dark World. So I could see my camera slipping there. I'm still going to leave that in, I don't care. This is completely unedited, as I've already said. And of course, this leads to the most heartbreaking moment of this movie, when we see that it was Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier that killed Tony Stark's parents. And oh man, honestly, the emotional pull you really feel there is just, it really gets to you. And you know, when you see the brutal way that they're murdered as well, it's just like, oh my goodness, you know, I'm actually surprised they managed to get away with that kind of violence in a PG-13 or 12A movie, but I'm thankful that they did, because it was a real emotional scene, which leads to the very personal battle between Bucky, Steve and Tony, and they are really not holding back any punches during this moment. And you're just thinking, who's going to win? You know, and it's led to believe that Tony's going to be the one that might actually die, even though he's been contracted for other movies. But it's safe to say that no one actually dies during this movie, apart from, obviously, Peggy Carter, as I already said. And then, also, there's another moment leading up to that I completely forgot to mention, which kind of ends the big airport battle, which is when Rhodey gets severely paralysed because he's shot down by Vision's Mind Stone and crashes down to Earth, flying blind. And it leads ultimately to the end, where you see Tony really trying to help him walk again. And you really get a sense that, you know, they're not just friends, they are kind of still brothers in a way. And I'm really hoping that we get to see the ultimate fight back from Rhodey, and he actually becomes, you know, able to walk again, which would be pretty cool. And we also see Steve also break out the other Avengers that were on his team from this great big bunker prison that Secretary Ross had set up. And then, of course, which leads to the post-credit scenes. Now, the first one puts Bucky back on ice and sets up the blank? Man, I really am fumbling up my words lately. I apologise to you guys. But it sets up the Black Panther movie, which, oh my god, just looks incredible. And I really can't wait to see that movie. And there is a final post-credit scene which people kept walking out over it. And it's like, guys, you do know this is a Marvel movie. You know, there's been, what, 12 of these movies now, and you're still walking out after them? What's going on with that? But the final post-credit scene is that we see Peter Parker, after the events of the airport fight, like really nursing a bruise on his one side of his face. I think it's this side. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. And we also see that, you know, May's kind of like, you know, really angry because of Peter being in a fight. And we see that Peter's really trying to subtly not tell her he's Spider-Man, but he's dropping names left, right and centre of who he's been in the fight with. And that leads to the spider symbol. And then it fades out to say that Spider-Man will return. Thanks for watching this, guys, as always. Now it's over to you, so feel free to comment below with any spoilers that I have missed here. Like I said, I didn't want to go in to way too much, otherwise we'd be here all day. And if you are new to my channel, feel free to click here to see more and subscribe, as I do make new videos as often as I can. And as always, guys, I shall see you all on the next one, and take care.